All right. So my name is Forss. I'm here to speak about productivity and preventing burnout. All right. So a little bit about me. I have a background in software engineering and a PhD in machine learning from Turku in Finland, a university called Åbo Academy. I'm a co-founder and CEO of a company called StageZero. It's a relatively new company, 3 people working on our first game. But I'm also an AI researcher at a private research lab called Silo AI that does artificial intelligence as a service. And I also have written a book called The Self-Aware Way Forward. It's going to be released sometime in March, end of March. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, is a little bit about what I've written in the book and a little bit about my experiences. All right, so why is this topic relevant? To start off, I want to show a bit of statistics. So, according to stress.org, 75% of all doctors' visits are stress-related. And stress is the underlying cause of 60% of all human illnesses and diseases. So it's highly relevant in a field like game development, where people work long hours and tend to have constant kind of milestones that they need to press for. Prolonged stress can then in turn lead to burnout. There's essentially two different types of stress. We have positive stress and negative stress. Positive stress is the stress that gets you interested in doing things. It's kind of pulling you to do more, while negative stress is more like something you're pushed by a task, pushed by a deadline, and so on. And I would say it's more the negative stress that leads to burnout if you're doing things that have a negative effect on you for a long time. However, people seem to think that the number of hours you work is what determines whether you will burn out or not. And I'm here to today say that that's not necessarily the case. So I claim that it's how you work that matters, and not actually the number of hours. So consider these two different scenarios here. So a few years back, when I was working 40 hours a week, I got really close to burnout. I was working as a teacher in a university, teaching programming courses and project management courses and stuff like this. The kind of negative stress from having constant courses led to getting really close to burnout, with kind of cyclic pressure coming before every Christmas and also after every Christmas for both semesters. Then I changed a bit how I worked. I left that place and started our game company, and I worked the best year of my life, 5,047 hours, which is equal to about 96 hours per week. And the difference in hours for going from 40 hours to 96 hours actually made me feel better, because I was no longer having this kind of negative stress. Instead, I was having a positive stress, and changed the way I worked. So, increasing productivity, I have 6 different points today I want to discuss, and then I have a point at the end discussing also how to prevent burnout. Research has shown that the average person spends about half of their time lost in thought. So this is a bit philosophical, and at the same time kind of research based. there was a study done by Killingsworth and Gilbert that showed that this is the case. And we can increase productivity either by becoming more focused or by working longer hours up to a certain point, after which there's diminishing return on how much you work. But essentially, if you work more, you get more done. Doesn't maybe stack up in the long run. However, the tips I have, or the tips I will go through, will show you how it can still apply. So becoming more focused is actually a skill that you can learn. And I'm going to talk a bit about that. Right. So I have 3 points here to talk about becoming more focused. And then I have 3 points to talk about how you can get more energy. So the first point is to learn to control your mind. So as the research has shown, humans spend about 50% of our time lost in thought. So then the idea would be that maybe we can reduce the amount of time we're spending lost in thought, and this is how you can do it. So there's a guy called Daniel Kahneman. He's a researcher. He's a researcher that's been doing he's a brain researcher, neuroscientist, and he's written a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. In this book, he has used his research to come to the conclusion that the human mind is split into two kind of systems. We have one fast system and one slow system. You can kind of see them as the impulsive system and the logical system. So the fast system is the impulsive system, which is kind of in general in control of the mind when we are not thinking about what we are thinking about. And then we have a logical system that becomes in control of what we do when we start actually thinking through different tasks or different thoughts in more detail. And the thing that I found here is that the impulsive system is the thing that's in charge when we are lost in thought. So if you're able to make it so that we would spend more time in this logical system than in the impulsive system, then we are also able to reduce the amount of time that we're lost in thought. And there are techniques that you can use to kind of train up the ability to be less lost in thought. Mindfulness are an example of these kinds of techniques. What happens in a mindfulness exercise is that it teaches us to recognize which of the systems that are in command. Kind of once we learn to recognize that, we are presented with an opportunity to change state. So in a mindfulness exercise, it's generally a kind of breathing exercise where you focus on, you choose to focus on something, for example, your breath, breathing in and out, and you exercise the ability to recognize when you lose kind of track of your own thoughts. So you start by breathing in and out and counting your breaths, and after a while you might notice that, oh, I lost count of my breath, I lost count of my thoughts. And so the mindfulness exercise is when you notice that happens, you release your thought or release whatever had kind of taken your attention and go back to doing the breathing exercise again. And when you do these kind of things, you strengthen your kind of your focus, so that you kind of automatically, after doing these kind of exercises for a couple of months, you automatically start releasing thoughts that you have that intrude when you try to focus on something, right? And it's kind of hard to start out with these kinds of exercises, so I've created a playlist of videos, or actually no, it's audio exercises. So it's this is a link to my SoundCloud, and from there you can check out these kind of exercises. I have both basic exercises and a number of more advanced exercises where you learn kind of these breathing techniques and similar. And so using that, you can change your state of mind from being in this impulsive state to this more logical state, and through that become more kind of focused for a few hours. All right. The second point is to control your body through exercise. So light or medium exercise between 30 to 60 minutes per day can increase productivity and also reduce stress. And here I have also a research from Ericsson, Kirk, and a bunch of others that's shown that exercise improves memory and learning. So if you set up your day so that you exercise when you're the least productive, then you can kind of increase your focus and get a few hours of focused energy to be able to get more done. The third point is about daily routines. So if you analyze your own behavior and make your workday into a process that can increase your productivity. So if you identify the weak points that you have during each day, they tend to reoccur. So for example, my weak points are usually after lunch. I get kind of tired after having eaten, and also in the morning I have a hard time getting started. So if you know when your weak points happen, you can use either mindfulness, or you can use another thing that I will talk about later to kind of get a boost in your productivity for a short while. So you can use one of the methods to fight those weak points. So the other part of becoming more productive is to find that extra energy. So I'm going to go through now 3 different things that I've found that have helped me a lot in getting more done, like either getting longer hours worked, or simply finding the energy to start something that I have tried to do but not been able to in a while. So feelings of not having enough energy and being powerless generally comes from how you structure your life. So to get more energy, we need habits that make us active instead of passive. So for example, an example of a passive habit is watching TV. Then you just sit down and you do nothing. You kind of turn off your brain and just your eyes just watch whatever is happening. And many people see watching TV as a kind of way of relaxing and getting back. And sure, you relax, but it's a passive habit, which means you actually kind of lose energy in the long run. You don't get energy back from it. You get energy back from being active. And so the first suggestion here would be to make showing up or starting into a habit, and which means if we I have an example of for example, I used to work full work days and then come home and not have no energy to continue with my own projects or other projects when I got home. And I thought kind of a long time with how I could be able to change that. And the solution for me was to essentially always every day just force myself to start with something, but not decide on what I need to do. So for example, I would fire up my computer and start thinking about doing work for a project, and then after I started, I didn't decide on what I should do. I just decided that, okay, I will do this for half an hour just to get a habit into starting doing this project. So I could sit there for half an hour and doing essentially nothing, but after a time, when this became a habit, I started automatically doing more and more. So starting is kind of the first step. And then after that, once you have been able to start getting more things done, you can apply what I call the 1 more hour mentality, or the 1 more hour technique. So once you've been able to create a basic habit, change the kind of mentality to when you allow yourself to stop working on something. So when we work on our projects, there comes a point when we start telling ourselves we have done kind of enough for today. You always get kind of, either you become really tired and you're like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, or maybe you even become happy with what you have done. Oh, I did this much faster than I wanted to, now I can stop. But if you then apply this kind of attitude where you have always 1 more hour after the first time you come to the conclusion that I need to stop, and then you do 1 more hour after that, then you will automatically, over time, stretch your kind of your willpower. You will stretch your willpower so that with time it becomes longer and longer. The time you can work becomes longer and longer before you come to the point that, oh no, I want to stop. And then you always apply 1 more hour after that, so you kind of stretch your willpower further on. Yeah. And then we have the kind of problem that I think everyone runs into, is that the kind of greatest problem humans have is we tend to forget why we start things. So if you ever have started a diet or something, first you're really into it, and you're really kind of, yes, I'm going to lose a lot of weight. And then you carry on for a few weeks, and suddenly you don't remember even why you started. So you just, you have to stop, or you feel like you have to stop. I don't even know what I started this in the first place. So to kind of combat that problem, I started using actually motivational speeches. So I gathered a playlist of motivational speeches by different famous people and people on the internet, and I've linked to that playlist here. So it's a playlist of different motivational videos that I use essentially daily to get back on track, to remember why I do something. It's really kind of miraculous how much energy you can get back out of reminding yourself of why you started something through motivational speeches. So identify when during a day you become unfocused, and then you can use either mindfulness or motivational speeches to get back on track to combat that problem. All right. So the final thing I was going to speak about is preventing burnout. And in a sense, I've been speaking about it the whole time, because the different points that I talked about, these 6 different points, they are all kind of part of what has helped me realize that I can prevent burnout. So I think the strongest point is mindfulness. If you're using it, there is a lot of different research that has shown it can reduce depression, it can reduce anxiety, it can reduce a lot of different things. But I'm also claiming that by doing daily mindfulness exercises, you prevent burnout, because you kind of learn to know your own mind. You learn how you work, and you learn how you can kind of release stress without having to go into a burnout. So if you follow the steps that I outlined, you will kind of effectively become immune to burnout. It's a process that you have to develop, but it requires kind of both exercise, it requires mindfulness exercises, it requires conscious effort daily. Through these steps you can kind of develop mental tools needed to cope and release stress. So this is my last slide. Here's my email address. Here's if you want to follow our company on Instagram or Twitter, you can do that. And here's a game that we are developing. And, yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. I mean, I think this is hugely important and obviously something that's underestimated. I mean, I still remember, people talking about crunch and how, that was a normal thing. And obviously, clearly in the world of games as a service, which I think most of us are in now, you can't do that because you can't have crunch after you've released something and still have a service that's worth experiencing. So, taking time out to look after ourselves and having a culture that says we should be looking after ourselves is incredibly important. Does anyone have any thoughts or questions they want to add? One here?
Hi.
Hi.
I have the question that once I approach a task that I really don't want to do, something that is necessary, but I'm totally not in the mood to do it, or I just don't like this in general.
Yeah.
Are there also techniques that can make me want to do stuff that I usually don't want to do?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would use the mindfulness techniques because it's kind of way of reminding you that you can kind of enjoy anything, and if you can enjoy anything, you can learn to enjoy anything, then you can, as you said, you can come past the idea of not wanting to do something. It's like you can enjoy any moment of your life through these techniques. Yeah.
I had a former boss of mine had a really kind of not interesting mindset to the way to do this. He hated doing chasing people to pay him. He just hated it. However, when he was in a bad mood, he found he was really good at it. And so he decided he would only do chasing up people for debts when he was in a bad mood. And so I think what I'm saying is if you know yourself and you're thinking about the way you're flowing and you're in your mindset and you're able to take time out and work out what is the real blocker, it's much easier, I think, than to map what you're able to do and schedule your time to fit when, okay, I may not like having to finish that bit, but I've got this deadline, I've got this thing, and the reward is it will be done and that I will get the benefit of knowing how to do that better next time. And I think having that kind of sense of purpose, even with those things that you hate, I think is really powerful. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Unlike me, just don't give yourself chocolate every time you do it. You do it like this. See, that always works. Okay, thank you very much. That was great.
Thank you.